Heavy metal media is an ever-changing world that's taken as many turns as the metal scene itself, and one of the main brands that's been successful throughout all this time is Metal Injection, a site most of you are probably familiar with. Well, today I'm joined by Frank Godla, the founder and owner of Metal Injection, who was kind enough to join me for an interesting discussion on his story, the trials and success of Metal Injection over the years, the struggles of maintaining a successful business in both the metal and journalism world, and we also talk about the Metal Injection Festival coming to Brooklyn, New York, September 21st and 22nd. Tickets are available now. And now enjoy my chat with Metal Injection founder and owner Frank Godla. Welcome to the Why It's Metal channel, Frank Godla of Metal Injection. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for having me and letting me tell my story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting. Well, I know first of all you have your festival coming up, the Metal Injection Fest.
Yeah, September 21 and 22 in New York City this time. It's gonna be a great time. Yeah.
Nice. So how's the planning for that going?
Well, planning takes a lot. It takes months and to put together. Then you put it out there in the world, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes just to prepare and make sure everybody's doing all the things they need to do and sorted, and the bands are ready to destroy.
Yeah. I think a lot of fans don't realize how much work is involved behind the scenes and like all year round to set up a quick weekend of fun.
It's crazy, actually. I mean, putting on it's amazing that I've got to do what I do now for 20 years, or a little over 20 years at this point. And I think of all the different facets of the music industry that we've touched on or worked on or done something or released or whatever. Doing a festival is probably the hardest thing, most pressure, unforgiven type thing that I've ever had to do. So it's a lot for sure to put on.
I guess I can see that, yeah, because a lot of kind of responsibilities.
I mean, if you think about it, you have several hundred people, like there because you asked,
Right, yeah.
31 bands, which includes 4 or 5 people each band, and then crew, sound, lights, everything. And then of course, all the separate contracts that you have with, the venue and all the personnel that are working it. So it's a lot of people that kind of like a film, like a Hollywood film or something like that.
That's a good way to put it.
A lot of people involved and invested to make it what it becomes,
Right. And I think especially recently we've seen quite a few festivals collapse on themselves. It seems there's quite some pressure on right now to at least make a passable festival. Not, I mean,
Yeah.
in general, just with the
I mean, I could
news
say
cycle.
for sure. And I could definitely tell you that it's given me a whole new perspective. This is the second one that I've done. The first, like, completely independent one that what I've done is this year. And it's definitely given me a tremendous perspective in what goes into it, and really a newfound respect for anybody that, does do this successfully. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Um, I definitely wanted to hear about the whole story with Metal Injection, how everything started.
Well, yeah, it's been it's crazy. I just glossed over that in the previous question, but like, yeah, 20 years. It started in January 1st, 2004 is technically when the website launched.
Right.
And that's what we've always celebrated through the years, was the launch of the website. But the reality is it was years in the making, I suppose, even before that. I mean, if you want to go like all the way back to when I was a teenager, I was a VHS tape trader. So
Nice.
like the video format is something that's always really kind of captured my attention. Um, and I mean, that's just like how we, there was no YouTube or anything like that. It was just like, I mean, there wasn't even really internet back then. So like,
Yeah.
like you had tape traders and VHS tape traders, and that's how I would like make pen pals with people in Europe, and we would like trade tapes back and forth. And that's how I would get wind of like a lot of cool bands that were out there or touring, gigging, or even if there was like a brand new band, because I was a sponge when I was a teenager. I just wanted to know every type of subgenre and every type of band out there, that if it was metal, it was like it was for me. I didn't
Yeah.
I was kind of a loner growing up. I didn't really have friends. I had books and metal, and I was just a
Those are
nerd.
good friends to have, though, to be fair.
They'll never leave you.
Yeah, it's
They'll
true.
never disappoint you. It's just one of those things where it's just like you could find comfort in going back to these golden records, and I still do, honestly. I'll throw on a record like October Rust, and it
Nice.
immediately transports me back to where I was in the mid 90s and how I felt and who I was at the time.
I know
And
exactly what you mean.
yeah, I mean, I think it was Monty Connor put it this way. I was interviewing him many years ago now, but like we talked about how the records that he grew up with like made such an impact that those are the go-to records he'll always go back to. One of them being like the original Black Sabbath record,
Mhm.
1970 Black Sabbath record, and he can like just paint a picture of where he was and when he was listening to it and everything. And he's like, it just like touched him in a certain way, and it was because it was like during a time in his life where it was very formative, and I totally connected with that because I'm the same way with the records that I love. So I get that notion. But yeah, I mean, going back anyway, so back in the 90s I was a tape trader and really just a sponge for metal and everything about it. And fast forward years later, when I'm like in the working field of my own, I wound up meeting somebody named Robert Pasbani, and he was working at my company. Well, I should say he applied for a job. Um, and the story goes is that he came in for a job interview, and his friend Greg was wearing an Opeth t-shirt at the time that nobody really knew who Opeth was yet,
Mm.
So I walked into the room and I saw the two of them, and I saw the Opeth t-shirt, and I was like, I don't even know what your story is, but you're both hired. Like on the spot, I just hired them off of a t-shirt. And Rob was getting into metal and would take his lunch breaks in my office, and would just like listen to me talk about the golden days of metal and
That's cool.
everything I knew about it. So, and then one day we talked about kind of starting a TV show, and that's where really Metal Injection was born. It's kind of like the story of Wayne's World. We were
Yeah.
a Brooklyn cable access television TV show, and it was pretty simple. It was just like dumb sketches in between videos that I would show based on my VHS tape trading days. And that's how that comes all loop around. Is like I had a stockpile of VHS tapes, and I'd be like, oh well, I have all of this footage, and I could just kind of like create episodic tapes based out of like my teenage years of
Yeah.
collecting VHS and having pretty much like every video that was out somewhere. um and that's how it really started. It was a TV show with dumb sketches and metal videos and some live videos. Then somewhere along the line we started interviewing bands, getting them involved once labels were kind of hip to the idea, and they were looking for new avenues on how to promote their bands. Century Media and Roadrunner Records were two labels that really gave us a chance early on, actually, and I always like to shout them out because they helped a ton. And yeah, and then one thing led to another, and we always myself and Robert, as two nerds basically, who were spending time on the internet, and would teach ourselves some HTML and Java for fun.
Yeah.
We were like, all right, well, we should start a website. How do we get our TV show on the web? And that, I think that's going to be a really big thing. And yeah, and it was really tough because it was the website Metal Injection, as it was essentially a website to promote our TV show. So it was obviously video on the web. It predates YouTube
Yeah.
by like 9 or 10 months. So it was pretty hard, but we wound up getting it done. Um, And of course, the site has morphed so many times into so many iterations, and now it's just become like even more than a website, but a brand that
Yeah.
just incorporates so many different avenues of the industry. And yeah, I mean that's essentially the fast forward track to the history of metal injection. It's
It's
20 years.
sounds like we could go over 20 years in about like a minute or two and just sum it up and be like,
Yeah, for sure. It's because like anything else, you like what's really interesting. Sorry to go off on a tangent here,
no, go for it.
but I've been catching up on a lot of books. Like for instance, Rob Halford's book. I finally got to through
Oh,
reading, and
cool.
and now I'm working on Geezer Butler's book, and it's truly remarkable how much people remember about every detail, their shows that they've done, or tours even, or year by year. Like it's like I have to wonder, like, do they chronicle these things? Because like when I
Hmm.
look back on 20 years of this business, it honestly, some days, depending when you ask, it'll feel like a week, and
Yeah.
others I'm like, wow, it's only 20, it feels like 50, like. So it's, but I think that's just like how time works in my head, particularly, and I honestly don't remember every little detail. Like even when I was touring around with bands and stuff like that, I would be the last person you would ever want to ask about a show or a tour, because I would have to refer to my bandmates. And I was just like, did we ever play this city? And I'm like, yeah, 3 times on this date. And I was like, I don't know how people do that. That's not me. I'm like big picture. Like I'll know a lot of the projects and stuff that we're trying to launch with metal injection, how all it took and how hard it was. And maybe I'll save that for a book someday, all the little tidbits and stuff. But
That would
for
be
now,
interesting. I think to go from trading VHS and just tapes all the way to metal brand straight up with a website, doing festivals and everything.
yeah.
How's that been to go from tape trading now to current day with content creation, reaching all these different avenues with your website?
It's I think like everything else in the world, it's simultaneously easier and harder. You know what I mean? Like the advent of the internet and technology and its exponential growth has essentially made everything available to us. I mean, every person with a web connection and a microphone could do this at this point. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like it's gotten so easy, but at the same time, it's so much harder because you have so many outlets and so many people doing it, and content now doesn't belong to the gatekeepers. It's everyone. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't think of my competition as other publications anymore. To me, like our competition, not is not like not real competition, but like
Hmm.
what we're looking at is not like other publications. It's social media, it's content creators, it's stuff like that. Like it's such a wild and diverse place to be, and I
Yeah.
never, if I can go back 20 years ago and told myself, as a young 20 something year old, if like, you don't know it now, but the world and the internet is going to change so much that everything that you're doing with tapes and VCRs and camcorder, like throw it out the fucking window. You're going to be doing, worrying more about like what's on your phone than anything else.
Yeah, you're gonna be worried about your like 5-second TikTok clip rather than your VHS collection from the 80s.
I never thought I would have to like go back and re-edit shit for reels.
Oh god, yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like, well, especially like this year, it's been a little rough because I'm kind of the person that's always looking forward, and I don't really sit there and reflect too much. There's just too much work, to sit there and be like, oh, well, I did this and that.
Yeah.
So, but it does become apparent when you take archive material for reels and stuff, which is kind of it's necessary, to do on social media, and it's really interesting to go back and re-edit certain things and be like, wow, this is first of all a trip to go back down memory lane or whatever. But the fact that like I'm taking stuff that like used to live on super VHS at some point and now converting it to like a 30-second reel to put on, social media to exist for whatever momentary value it has.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Because when I started making my videos, I'll pull up clips from like classic interviews or documentaries that I grew up watching. And it's weird to me to think that you should like some of them would be rare. They're hard to find. You'd have to like message someone, send a physical mail to get a certain record or something. And now you can just like Google it and pop it up and it's right there.
Yeah, everything's so easy and so instantaneous. It's made us completely, I don't know, ADD as a human. Yeah, basically as humanity, we're just like ADD driven. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, so it's definitely leveled out the playing field. The changes, and like I said, made it simultaneously easier and harder at the same time.
Yeah. I guess yeah, it probably just happens with changes in industries altogether. Sure, it probably happened when you focus on videos and then focus on interviews and growing from there.
For sure, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like it's ever growing, it's constantly changing. Like it wasn't like, oh, well, here's the internet, and then you just exist for 20 years. It's a constant evolving thing. I mean, like reels are kind of like the hot thing right now. But the next thing is right around the corner. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like whatever's popular right now is not going to be popular in a year, 2 years, 3 years. At some point, like literally everything changes. Nothing
yeah,
stays the same. Nothing is sacred. Um, and I think about that shit all the time. To be real for a sec, like I do. I think about that. Like the popular, even like think of metal, in the history of metal, like there are certain players out there that meant the world to us or meant the world to metal, say in the 70s, and they're barely recognized now,
yeah.
and the same thing, it's just like, you see somebody like Limp Bizkit, for instance, or a band like Limp Bizkit kind of coming back around, and you're like, well, how the fuck did that happen,
I
right?
wouldn't have seen that coming.
Exactly, and then and everything that goes along with it too, like that. I think like Flaw, for instance, is a band that's back on tour, and like there's just so many of these bands that existed in the late 90s and early aughts that are back at it now because there's this resurgence of interest in what is going on at that time. And
Yeah,
it's, I'm sure it feels great to be back, for these people, and to have some recognition, but it's not lost on me that like even something like us, like even it's been really hard to be a mainstay or uh something that's relevant for 20 years. I think that's honestly probably one of the hardest parts.
absolutely. I think just metal as a whole, you see bands that had 20-year legacies of being just champions, and now they are probably barely recognized, not getting place that many of us feel they probably deserve.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. I always say this, but I think some of the best bands in the world are some of the smaller ones, like they're
yeah,
ones that get glossed over. So, but there's no accounting for taste, and
yeah,
you don't know what's going to be, the big meal ticket in the end. So that shouldn't be what the thing that drives you.
yeah, absolutely. And you're just keeping up with the current things, and it moves way too quick.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of tell when you create music for people,
Yeah.
for some sort of vested interest versus like doing it for yourself and putting your heart in it. Um, and I'd like to think that a lot of what we do, whether it succeeds or fails, like that's still to some degree, like even as a company, we're putting our heart into what we do.
Hmm. How do you balance that with facing the unforgivable algorithms and everything? Because sometimes
Well,
it's difficult, even for myself. Like when I'll make videos on something I really care about, and it will get nowhere near the views of one that I'll do like throw together quickly, and it'll just take off.
I mean, that's pretty much the bane of my existence. If there's like something over 20 years that really hasn't changed, it's probably that. Even early on, the thing that I would spend, you know, 12 hours editing would get like 5 views. And then the dumb ass shit that took me 30 seconds is the one that like soars and goes viral or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's just like, are we serious right now? Like, really?
I go through that
And
all the time.
yeah, and but that's just it. Like you're not in the driver's seat in terms of what people are going to respond to or like. You can take a good guess, but like, you know, yes. So to to your point, yes, absolutely. Like it's hard to navigate that on a personal
Hmm.
side, but on like a business side, for instance, it's loss and gain. At the end of the year, the end of the cycle, whatever it is you're counting or reporting, as long as it did, as long as you did better than you were before,
Hmm.
then that's growth, right? Um, I also think of it kind of like there's a saying in the movie industry, in the film industry, where it's like, you do one for me, one for you, for
Yeah.
them, one for me, one
Yeah.
for them. Same, it's like for every small, tiny, porno grind band that we'll write about or something like that, there's going to be like the commercial, band. And of course, then there's like all the, and the commenters out there that love to hate, and they're like, oh, you guys just write about corporate trash or whatever. And I'm like, well, what's really funny is like there's a large archive of really minuscule bands on the website that you guys didn't show any love to. So yeah,
I
like,
I understand that. I get that too. I'll have some people commenting like, "All you do is hate, and bands are all your videos are just negative." But I'll have plenty of videos that are positive. They just don't get anywhere near the views that any
yeah.
negative ones do.
Yes, I guess that really falls into the pile of you shouldn't really invest anything you do in the comments. Every once in a while, of course, there's going to be like a real heartfelt message out there that you take to consideration. Um, but it's almost rare to get those kind of interactions. Like I'll probably get them more in like my email box or something. Where like obviously those I don't ignore. A comment
Mhm.
is fairly easy at this point for me to ignore because one, it's probably not directed to me, and
Yeah.
two, it's just like usually the haters are the ones that do the most talking. So yeah,
It will usually for me when I get comments like that, they're usually just completely don't make sense or don't understand what they're talking about. So that I'm like, okay, it doesn't bother me at all if like if I know you're wrong.
yeah. I mean, it shouldn't never deter you from what you were trying to do in the first place.
Yeah, totally. Is
So
that a battle you faced, starting Metal Injection, even when it was making videos, for the website and TV and everything? Was it still a struggle of people, like, not understanding it or saying it wouldn't catch on?
yes, I mean, I've been dealing with that probably my whole life. Just naturally being like an ambitious person. Um, Honestly, one of the biggest examples is a few years ago, I did this segment on Metal Injection called Slay at Home, and it
Mhm.
was during the pandemic. I think it was Warner Brothers, or honestly, I don't recall exactly. It might have been Warner Brothers, but the idea was that they were doing a virtual festival, um, and it was during the quarantine, and it sounded like such a great idea, and it was something that I was already kind of planning and thinking of behind the scenes, like just having conversations with my friends that I've acquired over at that point it was 15, 16 years, whatever, of being part of this industry, and just having conversations with my friends who are musicians and touring the world. um, it was kind of this thing where we all were really in this low spot, being kind of stuck home and not being on the road and doing the things that we love to do. And I was just like, you know what? Like, this is the first time we're all here. We're all home. Let's get together and do something. Let's put on a festival, kind of like a virtual style fest. And then out of nowhere, I think it was Warner Brothers, they announced that they were going to do that. And then when I watched it, it was basically just all of their bands that were pre-recorded at different places
Oh
at
god,
different
yeah.
times. So I was like, oh, so this has nothing to do with the pandemic. But meanwhile,
Yeah.
it was really just a vehicle to sell merchandise so
Yeah.
that they can continue making money in the quarantine. And I was so grossed out by it that I completely flipped the script and went the other way. I was just like, I want to do this not to make money, but to raise money for charity. And we wound up raising like $190,000 or something
Damn, that's
in
awesome.
charity for various charities. Um, and it was just shocking and surprising how many artists wanted to get involved with this program, with this virtual festival that I did. But explaining it
Yeah.
was like going first in the world, going for like being innovative in any way, shape, or form is so hard because you constantly have to explain what you're trying to do. And it falls on just like deaf ears sometimes, or people who don't understand what the end
Yeah.
goal is,
They,
or
like, can't even conceive of, like, the concept.
especially when you say that you're not in it for the money, and like, because that's just, in terms of business, like unheard of.
Yeah.
uh so it definitely gets a little confusing to a lot of people out there. But to answer your question, yes, there are many times in my career where I've had to explain what I'm trying to do, or people just don't understand, and it takes a while for it to catch up, especially in metal. Yeah, I don't want to talk ill about metal ever, but it is a little slow, when it comes to changes,
Mhm.
and that's not even a subjective thing that I'm saying, and not an opinion. It's fact,
Yeah.
Um, like if you look at the trends of music, that's just how it is. and and also, you know what, for the better, because metal is also one of the only genres out there that's still like buying actual records, which is a beautiful
Yeah.
fucking thing. So for all of its fight and stubbornness, it's actually doing some really incredible things.
Yeah, because it does the fans are a lot of pretty much diehard loyalists who want to keep buying records, who want to keep supporting the bands financially.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's
just
amazing.
yeah, it's a very beautiful thing about the metal community.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. I mean, we don't have the numbers that pop has. We don't have the antics or moving vehicles that pop, country, all these other genres have, but we do have some die-hard people still buying records, and I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
counts for a lot.
Yeah, it's awesome. It says a lot for the metal community. I was curious, you mentioned being on a term on film sets, and have you always had this, like, visual eye for media too in terms of metal? Because I kinda have the same thing. I've been through a lot of, like, acting classes, and I've been on film sets, so it's kind of a natural thing for me to kinda combine a lot of those elements with metal. So I was wondering if that you've had, like, a similar experience with that.
Yeah, for sure. To have yes, I mean, I'm a very visual person. If I want to learn something, I think I was like probably one of the earliest adopters. I was most certainly the first person in my friend group to really embrace YouTube. Like
Yeah.
for everything. I wanted to know how things worked. I wanted to know, answer my questions, and I needed kind of like a visual. I've always been that person, like I loved books growing up, and I would read textbooks for fun just to kind of like
Yeah.
understand things. But there's something about, the medium of video to get your point across and kind of like understand it in a very different light, that always really excited me. And once I learned how to do it myself and create videos and know the aspects of directing, producing, filming, writing, everything, and editing, it changed the world. It changed what you're capable of doing. And it's funny because like at this point now everyone knows those things, like
Mhm.
because you can even use like CapCut or whatever, which is like an editor on your phone. I mean, you see content nonstop. You go on Instagram for 5 minutes, you're going to run into like several different reels. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you get
That
hundreds
were
of ads right away.
right, exactly. And it's so it's out there. The information's out there. People know how to do it. It's not that unique anymore to know how to edit video, as like everybody could do it.
Yeah,
But I think everybody, if they took a step back, they could also agree that it changes the game, you know.
yeah,
So
definitely. Whole new way of marketing and getting word out there about bands.
yeah, and like I said, I've always been an early adopter of video. It's always been the medium that spoke to me, the medium that I kind of work in, and still to this day, even when I think of something for metal injection, I guess I do think of like what would the video look like what would the promotional reel for a festival look like, what would what I mean, there's still something stuck in my head that
Yeah,
does that. So
have like kind of a director mindset.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, well, if you think about it, like a CEO of a company is really a director.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's not that much of a difference. Like you're the ringleader, kind of where everything goes through. You're making all the executive decisions. It's sink or swim. It's going to be in your
Yeah,
name. So like there's a lot of parallels. It's a different industry, but the rules are similar.
I can definitely see that too. Throughout my experience in metal, being in a band and everything, it does feel similar at times, either on movie sets or that type of mindset where you're paying attention to a bunch of different things. Like if
Mhm.
we're performing, am trying to think of where the camera should go, or in my videos, trying to think of what clips would show the best part of what I'm trying to talk about.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could draw parallels with a lot of different industries, though.
Yeah,
If I've, le-
totally.
if I've learned anything in 40 somewhat years of life, it's that there's a way of conducting business, and at some point, the rules of business kind of apply no matter what industry or background you work in.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
How is that going from basically fully independent, trying to get the word out about metal injection, to getting to the point where it's now a business, it's now a company? Um,
Well, so that you're asking about like what, like the evolution of getting the word out there, or
yeah, and I guess just the feeling of like starting on your own, this thing of trying to do like metal publicity to the point where it is now a company and you now have your hands everywhere. Is that something you ever expected when you started? Is that
not really. No, I mean, when we like first started, there was no thought behind it. There was no business thought behind it, I should say. Um, we were proud of what we were doing, as silly as it was at the time. Um, but there was no like real, uh, and I'm talking the early stages. Once
Mhm.
we got the website out there, that's when things kind of started to change. Like
Yeah.
because it started to cost money. Like you're
Yeah.
like, oh shit, okay, well we have to pay for an archive now of a video, and it wasn't cheap, to start out.
In the
But
early
I
days of the
really,
internet, yeah.
yeah, and I invested everything. Uh, it's a little crazy, but I kind of put my life on the line a couple times just to make this company work. Like there was these moments that I was faced with this decision where it's just like, well, I'm either going to keep this dream alive and keep it going, or I have to like just take the whole thing down and find a different way of life, different job or whatever. And I mean, like the early years, the first like 6 or 7 years of metal injection, I still had a day job, and
Mhm.
it's very much like a band in that respect, where you're out there doing your dues, you're slinging it hard, basically having two jobs, one that
Yeah.
doesn't pay you at all, so I was easily working like 8-10 hours on metal injection every day while I was working a day job, so you would
Yeah.
come home from your day job and then metal, 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 you know. Um,
I know what that's
and-
like.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I think anybody in this game has to start somewhere, unless you just have like amazing capital, which I did not. I come from very poor, humble beginnings, so
Yeah,
you know, so it is pretty incredible, like where I've gone in my life and the company has grown to. Um, but yes, I mean, like I most certainly did not think I would be here when I started. No, like
yeah.
it's been a long. See, like now that I'm thinking about it, it feels like 20 years.
Now the details are coming
Yeah,
up.
I was like, fuck, it really has been a long time. Man.
I was gonna say, now you fast forward to now to doing the festival again and everything. It's got to be exciting.
I mean, yeah, if it's one thing I could always count on myself, it's to keep it exciting and for, you know, for me, and challenge myself. You know, like I feel alive when I challenge myself and I'm ambitious and I have like I'm still a dreamer. I guess that hasn't changed, you know, like going from
Mm,
way back in the day and what we thought we were capable of and where I thought it would go, you know, in the early days of the website where I was just like, oh yeah, we'll create a business out of this and then we'll make it a full-time job, which seemed like a pipe dream in year
yeah.
one. You know, fast forward to year 7 when we quitting our day jobs, like I can't believe we fucking did it. You know, like, and then you know you fast forward another 7 years, and then you're like leap forward, and you know now we're working on the next 7 years right now. I mean, like we're now closer to the 21st anniversary than we are the 20th, and that's so yeah, it's wild.
That's crazy. Time goes by so quickly.
It really does, and it only gets faster, you know,
Yeah,
as you get
that
older. So
I've been experiencing that. It's very strange.
yeah,
Um, I was actually just recently having a conversation with my mom, and I was saying how it's weird for me to see bands now live that I grew up with, and in my head, I had an image of what they look like at the time, and I see them now. I'm like, they have gray hair now. Holy shit!
yeah.
It happens. It's weird.
Well,
Uh,
I think it's pretty amazing too that you know, music. Well, obviously, music is like you know goes back to early man, you know, but music as contemporary music as we know it today, it's still sort of brand new. I mean, like if you just take Black Sabbath, we were talking about before, 1970, man, that wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of humanity, you
oh
know.
yeah, yeah,
So to watch these young bucks who started this entire genre that you know millions of us are diehard for grow old is a very unique thing that only could exist right now. You know, like we're watching in real time these legends, you know, get older and pass away and go through the cycle of life, you know. Um and it'll keep happening for sure. I mean, like there'll be a day where, you know, we're gonna look at Gatekeeper as the old guys, you know, like
yeah,
I mean, I still look at them as like the you know the babies or you know the
yes,
kids, but I'm like, no, there's gonna be a day where they're older and well, maybe not me, I'm older than them, but like you know, there's young kids out there that are gonna see it that way. They're
yeah.
that's their Black Sabbath, you know.
That's how I feel about bands like Sabaton and Gojira. I first became aware of them when they were still like the opening band on most tours, and now they're headlining arenas on their own. I'm like, holy shit, it's
Yeah.
awesome. But
Well, I mean, just the trajectory of watching a lot of these bands and you know, even having a hand in their success or their career is very meaningful to me and really one of the reasons we started this and continue to do it. You know, I mean, like Gojira are friends and like I adore those guys and I love that they're getting the attention that they deserve because they're truly one of the best fucking live bands
yeah,
that ever existed.
they're insanely heavy live. There's like you go to death metal shows, it's heavy, you're used to that. Then there's Gojira. It's like, is there an earthquake happening? What the fuck?
They're pretty stellar in what they do. And yeah, I love that aspect of this job. Probably one of my favorite things, honestly, just watching bands grow and soar and get the attention that they deserve, you know?
That's got to be really cool because I'm sure you've seen plenty of bands where you probably started talking about them when they were fairly well known or like starting up and now are at big levels.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. A lot of them actually. I mean, just off the top of my head, talking to Macedon in the early days, the Black Dahlia murder,
Yeah.
um, between the Buried and Me, but then even bands like Ghost. Like I did their first interview ever. So if you check YouTube and just type in Ghost first interview, that's me talking to the guys back in like
Nice.
20, maybe 2010, something like that. And when they're still playing to like 150 people,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just wild to think how far they've come.
I
And
wasn't expecting that with them. Like all the more power to them. I think it's cool, but I definitely did not expect them to be headlining arenas throughout the US. Um,
I was very eager to interview them back then because I saw something truly unique and just I don't know, accessible, amazing, catchy. It had the elements of everything that I thought would go right, and that intuition, obviously, it
you're right.
was I was right. Yeah. I mean, I don't take credit by any means. I think that like they are truly magnificent in what they do, and that's why they are the staple band and the well-known band that they are.
Mhm.
Um, but I think anybody who was paying attention in those early days maybe saw what I saw, and that this is a band that really could change the landscape of what rock and metal is doing.
Yeah, I remember pretty much as soon as they came onto the scene, they had a big, I'd say cult following, but that didn't last long because the following just grew and grew and grew.
Yeah.
Um, it's impressive.
Yeah, so them and even like Deaf Heaven, I think I did their first interview, and there's a lot of them. It's been fun. I love finding baby bands, and I love listening to demos, and kind of just finding that thing, that new band that really kind of is that sound you're looking for, that gives you that oomph to
Yeah.
continue to work. That's like probably one of my favorite things out there.
That oomph you just said, that's exactly how I like rate all the music I listen to. I'm like, does it make me feel that oomph or does it not? That's all I'm judging things on.
Sometimes it's all
Uh,
that really matters.
yeah. Um, like I obviously have my preferences. I listen to a lot of death metal and more underground stuff, but anything that catches my attention that gives me that feeling like, ooh, I like that. I'll just check that out.
Yeah. No, I love that. Love that feeling.
Um, I wanted to ask, owning metal injection and having it be so big where have employees and everything, how do you, I guess, source out who works on what, like what, I guess, what topics do you, how do you decide what topics to cover and go through everything?
Well, so yes, so there's a bunch of people involved because I not only run Metal Injection, but now Metal Sucks and Blast Beat Network, and so there's a lot more to it. But um, it's we have a lot of meetings, and I kind of will like voice the direction in where we're going and what we're doing. Um, and then there's expectation. You know what I mean? Like there's like that if there's a Slipknot story or Slipknot's doing something, it's gonna be part of what we're doing. Like that's just
Yeah.
it's a given. Come
Yeah, of course.
on, you know what I mean? Like how are you not gonna cover that? But and it there's the musts. You must cover, and I feel like I don't even have to like voice that. Like the bands that we have to talk about. Like it's
Yeah.
the bands that everybody's talking about. Um, but then like I said earlier, it's kind of like one for them, one for us type deal. So for every time we'll talk about Slipknot, we'll try to talk about like a younger emerging artist that we believe in, and that's where those are the decisions that become a little bit more tricky, like where to place them. And that requires a lot of just discussions, essentially, between us and behind the scenes, where we'll talk about bands and their trajectory, and what I think should be covered. um Sometimes a lot of it's also the writers or the editors on the site, and they'll obviously have a say. Um, and I really defer to them to do what's right for each site, and the voice that it has,
Hmm.
to get that point across and get the right bands across. So it's not as black and white as people might think it is. A lot of it comes down to what we like to listen to,
Yeah.
and just the general rule of how I feel media should go. You know what I mean? Like sometimes people were like, "Oh, Metal Injection, you guys are fucking fake because you don't write enough shitty articles about bands, or you don't put negative reviews." Or I'm like, but if you think about it, there's millions of bands. You know, we could only fit 15, 16, 17 per day.
Hmm.
The ones that you aren't reading about is our editorial voice to leave them out. Sometimes I'm not, sometimes there's no room or there's nothing going on, but um more often than not, like we're taking the ones that we're gonna take that ride with,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
anybody who's not part of that ride for that day or week or cycle or whatever it is. Sometimes it's because we're like, okay, well, we're not going to talk shit on the band, but for X reasons, X, Y, and Z, like, they just maybe won't be part of the coverage. That's, of course,
Hmm.
not with every band. I don't want to put it in anybody's head that just because they didn't get like a feature or something like that, it's us like declining. Like, that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm just saying, like, instead of talking shit about a band, I'd much rather just not say anything and then use that space to bring up a band that we do want to talk nice about.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely understand that. Um, I
Yeah, there's
tend to
only
go
so
pretty
much
hard on
space. There's only so much space and there's only so much time.
Yeah, is there that pressure to you have to get a certain amount like per day? Like on slow news days, is it difficult to come up with things? So sometimes I'll hit those ruts where it'll be like hot topics that I know I want to cover, and then there'll be like weeks or two where I'm like, what should I talk about? Fuck.
Yes. Yeah. So that's where we have really adopted almost since the start of the company, evergreens. Like we kind of just have things that they're not things that are current events or timely in a way that we have to get them out at certain times. So we'll stockpile them and be like, oh, this will make a great evergreen for a slow news day. you
Yeah.
know so we have our tricks. But yeah, some days there's a slow news day. Like you can't get around that, and it's understood across the board. Like there's a floor to the amount of traffic that we wind up getting on the site. I would
Hmm.
like to see. I give my editors a number where I'm like, we need to hit this, as performance review each month. But I'm not gonna burn the place down if we don't get there, because I know that some days it's like, it's real slow. It's just a
Yeah, yeah.
slow news day, or there's events that's going on in the world that isn't really working with us. Sometimes there's fucking holidays. Like it's as easy as just a holiday could be like a bad time for us because it's a 3-week day or something like that, and people aren't on their phones or checking out metal news or something. You can't control that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the best that you could do is kind of just be prepared for it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Me and my YouTuber friends all the time complain about when sometimes our videos do great and then the next one's bomb. Like the whole next couple of weeks just bombs and one will do great.
I mean, that also goes back to the algorithm
Yeah.
and how kind it's going to treat you any given day or week. And it's forever. Unfortunately, it's this new practice and that's governing our lives.
Yeah.
And you're
It definitely is.
constantly chasing reach in the algorithm, and but that's real for literally everybody at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah. Everyone in every industry I know, it's the exact same thing. It's not unique to metal in any way.
Yeah. The only thing that gets hard is that that's essentially our bread and butter. Like that's how we
Yeah.
make money is like getting the traffic that you need to sustain, and the only way that happens is through the algorithm. So yeah.
Yeah. It is a beast.
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna bring up what was I just gonna bring up about the algorithm? Or not the algorithm, I guess, but how's that been facing not only the challenges in the metal industry, but in just media in general? I know we talked on that a bit, but has there been other times where there were challenges where it maybe seemed rough, or were there other time periods where like it was great, like everything was taking off? Because a lot of people I think currently freaked out about AI and new technology affecting metal and how that changes things. And I think of two of, like we were saying, other changes that have happened where people freaked out about. Um, yeah, how do you feel about just?
Yeah, well, to answer that question, absolutely. Of course, there's been massive changes that have scared me. They're like, I mean, take something as like, for instance, YouTube. We were talking about YouTube before and how we predate YouTube and how we had our own archive to run our Flash player. And I still remember when it came to the point where we could no longer ignore that YouTube was the norm. Like I kind of fought it a bit because I'm like, I just don't know. Like, is it going to be the same? Are we going to lose money? And
Mm,
because they weren't even really monetizing. Like the accounts weren't really being monetized at that time, so I didn't
yeah,
understand how we would, continue and make money doing what we're doing. And um, so I was pretty hesitant about it, but um, you learn you learn to adapt, you learn how it works and forms so that you're able to make decisions that informed decisions that will change that perspective for you, or like allow you to nestle in this new click and figure it out, a way to make money or sustain. So yeah, absolutely, there's been many things along the way that prove to be challenges. There's equally times where things have gone great, surprisingly,
hmm,
and it's amazing to feel like, I mean, these days things are more challenging, I would say, because we are a company that's growing in a lot of different directions. It's not, it's like we were talking about before, it's no longer just a website.
yeah,
So now that it's more of a brand and we're branching out, and in part because I'm just very ambitious of a person, I want, I'm like, all right, well, we succeeded here. Let's succeed in this area, in this area, in this area too, Um, and that's proven to be challenging, because it's like you're jumping 2 feet first into this thing that you're not doing every single day, and
yeah,
you're learning the growing pains of this new area that another company or another person will have a lot of insight and knowledge to, because the same way that we have been doing web media for so long, um, they have been doing concert promotion for that long, for instance. So yeah, so it's but I enjoy the challenges.
yeah.
I hate love them. Like I hate how they make I hate how they make me feel personally. Like there's just so much pressure and anxiety and everything. But I do recognize that those are the things you need to do as a person and as a company to grow.
Yeah, that's how it was for me starting out with YouTube too. Like getting no views, working for hours, sometimes days on a video for it to like barely get any traction at all, and so many moments of like questioning if it's even worth it, if you should just keep doing it or not. But like you were saying, it's that second job where you're not getting paid, but you're just riding on your faith and desire to do it, and hoping that it pays off.
There's been
Um,
times where I absolutely thought about throwing it in. I think it might even been like I'm terrible with like years and dates and stuff, but like maybe 2010 or 11, it was just like a really tough time. I just felt like, everything was becoming a little bit mundane. We're doing the same shit over and over and over again. And it's like, it's not pushing through. It's not getting the results that we expected or wanted. And nowadays, like it's a little bit easier to navigate that because we do a lot of analytics work,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll like just sit there and analyze and report things and the movements and how they go for 3 months before making an assessment, so it's a little bit more of like a controlled type area. But years ago, it was literally as easy as just like, oh, let's just try this and see how it
Yeah.
goes. And it's like, oh yeah, that sucked. Yeah, let's just keep going. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, are we enjoy doing it? Let's just
Yeah.
keep, as long as we enjoy doing it. That was our barometer. Like, do you enjoy doing it? Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everything is a little bit more informed with, and in part it's just the world that we live in. You have the analytics at your fingertips. You have Google, you have Meta, you have YouTube gives you a whole string of analytics. I'm sure you look at as a YouTuber yourself.
Yeah. It'll show me like what countries people are watching, like what age they are and what time. I'm like, God damn, how's it know all that?
Yeah, and it could get very granular, and you want that kind of information for various points of your career, you know, because who knows, maybe you have like a really strong following in Japan, and you should pivot to your audience in Japan, who are paying more attention, stuff like that. It's really helpful, and those are tools that did not exist when we started.
Right.
So it's I keep coming back to this throughout this interview here, but like things are equally harder and easier at the same time.
I agree with that. I've talked to friends who are in the metal industry too, and a lot of us will agree on that. Like in some ways, it's become a lot easier for new bands, and in some ways, it has definitely become a lot more difficult. Not even just managing the social media thing, but I'm sure you've seen bands go from having to send out demo tapes, having to try to get a label. Now it's a lot more venues to be independent.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, totally. I mean, so I used to have my home address on the website to submit your demos and stuff to, because again, going back, I would enjoy that kind of thing. I'd like sit there and actually listen to all the CDs. My mailman absolutely hated me because he would just drop off like, here's like 20 new records to listen to, and but I would take pride in that, like listening to every submission that we'd get to Metal Injection. And at some point, like I was just like, I can't do this anymore, and B, everything's moving to more digital based anyway. So let's just set up like an email box to send that to, and then that just got absolutely crazy. So like
yeah,
at this point, we don't really take a lot of unsolicited stuff. Like it's just so much easier. What we're talking about here is essentially cutting through the clutter. Is
yeah,
the terminology they use. It's never been easier to get a record out there in the world on DSPs, on YouTube, everywhere that every platform you could think of. But just because it exists out there doesn't mean that people are listening to it. You have to cut through the clutter somehow, and a lot of that sometimes will come down to the publicist.
yeah,
Like, because or labels. I mean, essentially labels are kind of clicks of like a brand that you trust. Like if it's something that is, I mean, even still to this day, if it shows up on Metal Blade Records, I'm going to listen to it
yeah,
because it's Metal Blade Records. Like easy as
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's just like, oh, it's on Metal Blade. I know those guys. I know they don't take those decisions lightly. I know the backing and what they do for their bands. I'm gonna listen to it.
right,
And so whether it's a publicist or a label or a media sub like Metal Injection, I think we're all geared towards trying to make an easier experience for the listeners out there. you know um we're tastemakers. Like, I think that's a term that doesn't really get said anymore in this newer generation,
hmm
but that's essentially what we all intended to be in the beginning.
tastemakers is an interesting phrase,
Yeah.
but that's
I mean,
cool.
if you think about it, like, I like I'm telling, it's like telling your friend, it's like, yo, I found these 5 bands I
Yeah.
fucking love and I adore. I want you to check them out, but but
Yeah, it's
amplify.
when in my videos, there's certain bands that I'll highlight more than others, and some people ask why. I'm like, because I like them. I want to talk about that band. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, that could be said about a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, even in this interview. It's just like, how do we choose what bands to cover, or what do we push, what do we feature, what do we work with, what do I do events with, who do I have, how do I go about booking bands on my festival? A lot of it comes down to what do I like,
Yeah,
and trusting that instinct that it's going to work out,
yeah, and it seems to have worked out pretty well so far. 20 years on.
We're still here. We're still kicking. We're still doing our thing. I just wanted to, have an amazing community for metalheads, to be metalheads and discuss metal things, and show up to the shows and buy the records and buy the cool exclusive T-shirts we have going on, and I mean, like, I don't know people whether they know it or not, but like there's a lot of conversations and meetings and stuff that goes into everything that we wind up putting out. And not every single thing that we put out or do is going to resonate with people, but I surely hope that we have a large enough community where it resonates with some people,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the biggest metal sites out there, if not the biggest one. So I think it's resonating pretty well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, what plans do you have going forward? You said that you're very forward thinking. Um, is there plans to do more festivals elsewhere, or any other like avenues to try to branch into?
It depends what day you ask me. That's the reality. It's yeah. I mean, I'm crazy, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have the metal injection cruise someday, or you know what I mean. Like, I could say shit like that because it's like in the back of my head where I would love to take things always.
Yeah,
Just always be adventurous, always be ambitious, always look for the next thing, always look for the new challenge, always just think about the thing that's going to excite the shit out of me personally and try to get there. Make life interesting. Um, but reality, you have to reel it in sometimes. You'd be like, all right, well, we're not able to do that yet.
yeah,
So baby steps here. Um, uh, Immediately there's we have limited edition exclusive merch items coming out. Like we're working with. I don't know if people know this, but we have a web store that you can find on metalinjection.net. Just go to the store. And the web store not only has metal injection items, if you're inclined to purchase those, but we work with a lot of bands to create exclusive items that they can't
yeah.
find literally anywhere else. And that's been an exciting new endeavor for us. That we're going to continue. And actually, just so I don't know when this is going to come out, but next week we're going to be releasing something new on the web stores for that.
Nice.
So that'll be cool. Of course, the festival is my focus right now. This year's festival, Metal Injection Festival, coming this September 21 and 22 in Brooklyn, New York, is this is the first year I'm doing it in New York, coming from California last year. That was super successful and an awesome time. That's kind of been my drive and focus at the moment, and worry and stress and everything in between.
Right. Yeah.
Just what it is. And I couldn't tell you necessarily next year because I do have a lot of things in the works, but nothing that's concrete or secure enough for me to be like, oh yeah, this is going to come out and here's the date.
Yeah. The metal injection cruise is coming this day.
Oh, shit, I wish.
um. Yeah. What was the decision to do it in Brooklyn this time instead of California? Do you want to just move it around, or just?
Not necessarily. It's part of it's that, but the truth is that's where I started. That's where the company started. Brooklyn, New York. That's where I'm from. That's where I lived for most of my life. These days I became a nomad. But when it came down to doing the 20th anniversary of the company and all the events and different releases and stuff that we're doing, I tried to make it a little bit. Even though I'm not a person who goes back and looks at the beginning that much or anything, um, I felt like, okay, if I'm gonna pick a location, like let me take Brooklyn because that's where we started. That's where our origins are from. Like, let's bring it home, kind of deal,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and yeah, I mean, Brooklyn is still a huge part of my life. It's essentially it's home. I mean, you live there for several decades, and it has become a big part of who I am in my life and everything. So it just made sense to like, yeah, this year let's go home.
Yeah, it makes sense. 20th anniversary celebration,
Yeah.
everything. How did you go about picking the bands that you wanted to perform for? You were saying that it's pretty much who you like and want to see, but did you have anyone specific in mind that you're like, I have to go book them for this year? Because there's a couple of like, I know you have God forbid, 3 Inches of Blood, and some more rare performances. Um,
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I mean, booking a festival is interesting, like because no matter how much you organize a list of things you'd like to see, doesn't mean that it's going to happen, and especially all at one time. It's to get 5 people in the same room at the same time is a challenge. To get hundreds
yeah,
is like a miracle sometimes.
yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I mean, a lot of it came down to me creating lists and like stuff that I wanted, and I was working with a booking agent to get it organized and together, send out the offers, see if they were available, and um, but I mean, every band on this roster is there for a reason, and
hmm
that reason is that they kick ass in what they're doing, and not only that, but it's really important for me for a festival. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have traveled to so many festivals around the world and kind of pick up, bits and pieces of what I like about certain aspects.
yeah,
And, one thing I absolutely adore about how Europe does it. I mean, and I always have to say this, but if you've never been to a European festival, it's something every metalhead owes it to themselves to do. Like,
yep,
you have to see what a European festival looks like, how it's run, how it's organized. The placements of the bands are different. The overall feel is different, and they don't. I mean, it depends. Like, if a metal festival might have metal bands, but take a festival like Roskilde, for instance,
yeah,
in Denmark, and that was a truly unique fest that I've been to years ago, where you would have, I don't know, like a fucking 2-piece EDM thing, like opening for Goat Whore. I
yeah.
literally, the year that I went, I literally watched Rihanna open for Metallica. You know,
Oh, I think
so
my friend was there actually. I remember hearing about that.
yeah, but that's my point. Is just like that's the kind of shit that will happen at a European festival, and I thought that was so cool. So I'm like, you know what? There are no rules when it comes to like putting a fest together, and I kind of adopted that when I try to put mine together. So that's why I have bands like La Macchia, um, who is this like beautiful uh dreary writer. I mean, probably most people know him from the band Candiria,
Mhm.
but like his solo work is very very different, and a lot of it's very emotionally slanted. Or an artist like Del Judas, who's like kind of like the dark and dreary version of Chris Isaac or something, and
Mhm.
next to Body Box, you know so like it's just twists and turns, and I kind of love that in a fest, because when you're actually there experiencing it, it takes on a very different feel, and it doesn't feel so monotonous. It almost never feels monotonous because it's not like death metal, death metal, death metal, death metal, death metal. It's like, oh, let's go watch this industrial band, and then a death metal band, and then a deathcore band, a black metal band, and then a thrash band, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it goes through different modes, and it's kind of like listening to a live playlist, and I love that. So
That that's what really attracted me to festivals too, is like getting the full performance of an amazing band and then immediately going to something that could be completely different. Like I went to some festival where in the same day I saw Bolt Thrower and Snoop Dogg. It's like you'd never imagine that's gonna fucking happen.
That is awesome. That's the kind of
Yeah.
shit I like to hear, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like, diversity in the lineup to make it exciting, and like you're saying, it can break up the monotony, and a lot of fans will have the thing they're, like, mostly into, but then they might be like, "Oh, that song actually sounds good from that power metal band. I'll go check that out." When I went to Milwaukee Metal Fest, a bunch of my friends with me are, like, mostly, like, death metal heads, pretty much straight up, but they decided to watch Doro. They hadn't checked her out before. I love Doro, so I told them, like, "You need to watch her," and they
Mhm.
were blown away. They totally loved it, and
Yeah, I love. I was there actually. I watched Doro, and that was great, man. Like, yeah, I
yeah.
again, those are the like moments that I enjoy. Kind of do something just a little bit different. I would say the Metal Injection Fest goes even further down the rabbit hole with that. Like, there's just bands that people are going to be like, wait, why is this here? And I mean, honestly, they're dark, depressing. They're what I call metal adjacent. You know what I mean? The same way that you would look at like a Chelsea Wolf or Woven Hand
Yeah.
as they're not necessarily a metal artist, but like what they're doing, I think, resonates with metal fans. And I'd like to think that metal is the most open-minded genre of them all because it incorporates every other genre that exists out there. You'll find a jazz metal band, you'll find a rap metal band, a trap metal band, like all these, but like it very rarely goes the other way around. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't hear like new metal country. I don't think that's a thing yet.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I could be wrong.
That'd be interesting. No, I totally agree. I always tell people that I feel like you could take any human on the planet, you could find at least one metal band or metal adjacent band that they would like because it goes in so many different directions.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's wild. It's a beautiful thing. I think that's what really separates our genre from any other. And I like to celebrate that and kind of showcase that in the fest that I put together.
yeah, I think that's awesome. Do you feel like does the audience usually go along well with that? Do you have anyone that's like wants to see just straight death metal, or are they pretty receptive to all the different types?
I mean, I think the kind of mentality or crowd exists, obviously. Like looking at maybe the response or comments to Summer Slaughter, for instance. Like that is a crowd that was like very direct in what they wanted or expected, I suppose.
Hmm.
But I think it's important to set the precedent that we're not one style.
Yeah,
We're not going to showcase one genre. We're not, it's not that. I think Metal Injection as a website is represented across like many subgenres, and like all the events that we do should be expected as such as well. you know
yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think I kind of ran through everything I wanted to bring up. I don't know how much time you have. I don't want to keep you from anything important you have to do.
No, I mean, you're keeping me from the gym, so other than getting swole.
Damn, you have to blame me for if you don't bench enough. If you're like, God damn YouTuber. Took the
Yeah, well,
time.
I have a meeting coming up in about 15 minutes, so as long as we you
Okay.
know
Yeah.
But I'm good, man. Yeah, I just thank you for the support, and honestly, yeah, if anybody is around the tri-state area, please visit the Metal Injection Festival. Tickets are on sale. It's gonna be a great time. We got Ginger, 3 Inches of Blood doing their first East
Yeah.
Coast reunion show in over a decade. God forbid coming through playing Gone Forever for the first time ever there. What else we got? Converge,
Yeah.
Cave In doing an acoustic set. We've got Pallid Veil. It's just like a super group that I put together myself with Luke LeMay of Gorguts, Dave Davidson of Revocation, Liam of the Dillinger Escape Plan, and Elliot of Car Bomb. And the four of
Okay.
them are writing music just for this festival, and they're going to debut the music, 30 minutes of music at this festival for the first time
Shit.
ever.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah, I was going through the lineup and I didn't recognize that name, but that's cool.
yeah,
That's
no, that
definitely
was a big thing that I wanted to push out there. I truly believed putting these four individuals together would be really creative and interesting. And Even I haven't heard it yet. So
I was
we're
just
all
going to ask, have you heard the music yet? But
no, we're gonna be surprised together. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely encourage anyone who can make it out to the Metal Injection Festival to do so. It's definitely a more unique lineup than you're going to see at a lot of festivals throughout the U.S.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, come out for a good time. And
Yeah.
plus, we got the Metal Injection beer on. I believe it might be on draft, but we'll have cans there too.
Oh, damn. That's awesome. Now, how does it get? So you went from tape trading to having your own beer. That's got to be exciting.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting, and maybe I shouldn't even be announcing that to the world, but I don't drink beer.
I actually don't either.
I never really had one. I drink liquor, wine, anything else, but like beer is something. I had a carbonation issue when I was younger, so I never really got into it. But it is pretty exciting to have something like a beer. We have our own coffee as well. Like it's this year in particular has been really wild with the releases. Like I kind of set out for that though. Like I was just like, oh man, like what do metalheads are into? What am I into? What would I like to see? I mean, I love coffee. Obviously, I drink coffee all day. So
it's a big metal thing.
Yeah, I was like, man, I fucking love black coffee. I want my own black coffee. Yeah, it's been amazing working with a lot of companies outside of the metal world to do something like this. That's really cool and unique for not just us, but for them as well.
Yeah, it's a good sign to show that like major companies that aren't focused on metal start taking it on. Like when Liquid Death kind of took off and it became such a big main thing, like non-metal people recognize it and it helps seep metal slowly out there more and more.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's everyday products out there. And not that I think that we're converting any, pop fans or hip hop fans to metal because of a beer or a coffee, but it's
a good beer.
Right. Well, yeah. Right. But it's good to have it out there kind of just to bridge that gap between things that people enjoy, metalheads enjoy. I mean, we are a community of human beings and, we do and consume human being shit. So why not?
And especially metalheads love putting our band logos on pretty much everything we have. So it's perfect.
Yeah. I just went to the Kiss Museum recently and it was just like, wow, they really do have every product in the fucking world with the Kiss logo on it. So
yeah. So metal injection is not going to go that far. You're not going to get a metal injection casket or condoms or anything.
I was going to say the day I have a metal injection casket, that's when I'm done. Just someone just put me in it,
Damn. Well, hopefully that's a long time from now and you have success with your festival and all the other avenues.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll wrap up there. If that's cool with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, dude. Again, really appreciate it. Appreciate Katie hooking it up. And good luck with everything.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for the platform. And feel free to edit this. I know it was rather long, and I'm sure there's more highlight bits than than you need. So feel free to edit everything. Let me know if you need anything else. I'll be here. But thank you for the platform, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. For more from me, check out my band Dark Insanity on Instagram, here on the channel, and now on all streaming platforms. We just released our debut EP, Rabid Psychosis, now available. You can find us on Spotify, on iTunes, on Apple Music, on OnlyFans, we're everywhere. If you want more of me making fun of stuff, you can check out my podcast I do every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, where you can hang out with me live, ask whatever questions you want, and make fun of whatever's going on in the metal world. And I've started doing game streams on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm starting with the most metal game of all, Brutal Legends. So join me live on Sundays to have fun killing some pixels. Subscribe to my second channel, Why It's Metal Podcast Clips, where I'll be uploading segments from my live podcast and podcasts that I do guest appearances on. We've got merch available for the channel and for the band. Now you can get Why It's Metal t-shirts, Savior of Metal hats, Dark Insanity t-shirts, Dark Insanity weed bags. We've got everything. Links for all of my stuff can be found in the description of this video. Anyway, that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video.